Cool. Well, hello, everybody. My name's Keith Stirling. Let me just get on the right screen. So I've been in software engineering for over 30 years, and I've been pleased with some of the mentoring experiences that I've had. I've had people who've mentored me during my career, and I've also had some really positive experiences mentoring other people. So this piece is all going to be about just kind of what I've done within the mentoring space and the lessons learned and the key areas for people. So it's a mix and match. It doesn't purely talk about being a mentor, it also talks about being a mentee, because it's a two-way experience at every point. You know, the mentor is helping the mentee, but quite often the mentee is also helping the mentor. So we'll kind of get into that. But mentoring itself is considered outside of the line management role, and it's really important that you see you've got in your career you'll have line managers, and 99.9% of them will tasked with improving you within the remit of the organization, definitely within the team, but also within the wider organization. Where a mentor differs from that, they're just a source of advice. It's where somebody can offer you personal advice about anything to do with your career, inside of work, outside of work. It should be considered as a very kind of secure environment where you can talk about anything you want that might help you progress, whether it's inside of work, outside of work. Quite often some of the conversations that I have with your line manager will be very different to what you have with your mentor, because you may, if you want to make a complete career change, in a lot of organizations, obviously your manager's not wanting to lose you, wants to continue growing, but you might want to work in from a Java developer to become a machine learning data analyst. That's a complete career shift. You might want to move from programming into data analysis or business analysis. Some of those changes, it's worth having a conversation with a mentor who may have gone through that. And what they're going to do is they're going to share their information, their experience, what they've done, including the mistakes that they've made, with you, to allow you to then make informed decisions. You can use them for anything. You can use them long-term, short-term. You can use them for a specific piece. You can have multiple mentors, and don't feel like you can't stop a relationship with a mentor when it's naturally come to an end. There's all those things, but it's really important that you use the mentoring experience to gain from other people's experience, so you don't have to make uninformed decisions. So what's the role of a mentor? It's somebody who's got a toolbox of experience. They've done things and they've done it multiple ways, and some of them have worked and some of them haven't worked. What they'll be able to talk to you about is all of those experiences distilled into probably a set of actions or a set of options for you to explore. That doesn't mean to say you need to be, talking to somebody who's got 30 years experience in the IT industry. You're looking for somebody who's got experience with the problem that you'd like to solve. It could be somebody who's just gone through a graduate program, someone who's gone through getting into one of the big organizations like Amazon and Google, someone who's done a career shift, somebody who has looked at changing roles. That's ultimately, it doesn't matter what they're doing, as long as it's targeted at what you're after. And when you have conversations with them, you should be able to tease out the experience that they've had. Have they done it multiple times? Have some worked, have some not worked? But don't feel afraid that you have to jump at the first mentor who turfs up at your virtual desk. But also, it doesn't mean that you can't switch mentors when the toolbox needs to be different, or the set of skills is not in their current toolbox. So why is it important? Well, as somebody who's in any kind of career, but we kind of talk about within the software, you face decision points at any time during your career, and the best way to make those decision points is with the right data. You can't make a decision unless you really kind of know what's influenced that decision, and the right data comes from experience. So if you don't have that experience, you're clearly not going to have the right data, therefore you can't make the right decision. And that experience, which leads to the data, comes from somebody having faced that decision, at least once, and being successful, so they can share you how they did it, or maybe they've done it multiple times and some of them haven't worked and some have worked. And so mentoring allows individuals to provide real world experience to help influence your decision. When you want to say, right, I'm thinking of moving jobs, even moving companies, or I'm really wanting to get into management, or I'm looking to move forward in my career within the current company, your mentor should be able to talk to you about that and say, well, this is how I did it. These are the key challenges I faced. This are the steps I took. You can also use this to ask personal, private, sensitive data. Sometimes if you're having a struggle within your career, within your work, you can take it right out into your personal life. You can use mentors to ask those questions, knowing they're going to have no influence on your career path, no influence on your day-to-day work. And sometimes you can use it to practice a type of conversation that you're going to have with a manager or a colleague or a peer. So if you're having a problem with somebody, rather than not know what to do, talk to your mentor, talk about experiences where they've talked with somebody who is not engaged with what you're doing or you're having arguments with. Talk through scenarios with your mentor, and they'll talk you how to deal with conflict, how to deal with people who aren't engaged with you or you're having a problem with. It's a useful piece where you don't feel like you can have that conversation with your kind of your current line manager. And some of the mentoring I've had has all been about personal relationships and how I would communicate or how I'd face a specific challenge or a conversation with somebody. So there's multiple faces to this. The benefits of mentoring is really useful. You get access to information and advice from experienced individuals. That's what a mentor is always. A mentor, it goes back to that toolbox thing. They're always an experienced individual within the context of the problem that you're trying to solve, and it's really important that that's the kind of the focus. They can increase your knowledge and confidence on career decisions and kind of various aspirations, because it's not like you're just blindly trying to move to a different position or reach a piece of way of working. They're really useful of gaining on their experience. It's really helpful if you're not good with communication, if you want to learn communication skills, because the relationship with your mentor is out with anything to do with your job and your day-to-day work and how you'll be viewed for promotions and progressions and things. Your mentor's there to help you understand. So you could go to your mentor and go, really want to have this conversation with my line manager about getting promotion or getting progression or taking on a new role or taking on more accountability. And your mentor's there just to basically listen to how you're doing it and offer advice. But also you can role play and let the mentor kind of give you the experience of how they've done that. I think one of the other things is you get to explore things that you might not want to do. Whether it's your career is not going the right way, or the type of work that you're doing is not what you want to do. Have that conversation with your mentor. It's very confidential and should be. A mentor will fail if they don't maintain that confidentiality between you. It should be a one-to-one conversation. Left the mic on. Okay. It allows you to discover your strengths, and one of the most important things, it opens doors. Your mentor should know more ways of doing things. They'll know more people, and sometimes they may offer a different way of doing something by going and speaking to somebody, or they'll know people who could particularly help with you. Sometimes your mentor might even know organizations which are better suited to your strengths and allow you to develop your career. So again, that mentor is that toolbox is not just different ways of doing things, but it's having you're getting the benefit of their network of people who they know. Oops. So how do you find one? There's no kind of hard and fast rule about finding a mentor, but find somebody you admire and ask them. There's lots of people who, as part of their role within their job, is to carry out mentoring functions. It's a lot easier, obviously, with it in the same organization, because they're generally tasked to develop the talent within their organization. But quite often, I've worked places where we've been expected to mentor out with our current org, and that's kind of building the network and looking for people to bring in. So it's a kind of a two-way piece. But you find somebody, it's no harm in asking them. The worst thing, they could just say no. But if they're good at mentoring, they may say no, I'm busy, or I've got too many people, or I'm full. But there's these people that you could talk to. Look for role models in your organization and ask them. Attend networking events and ask people, and use the likes of LinkedIn and ask. You've got to be a proactive. You need to mentor. You need to reach out to somebody. If you're within a company, there's quite often they have their own mentoring processes, so you can sign up. But I think what happens is a lack of proactivity. You don't really get to the people you need. You've got to find the people you want. You can ask your line manager for a mentor. You can ask people who would make a good mentor, but it all starts with asking that. So keep an eye out for people you'd like to be mentored by, or people that you think might be able to add value to your progression. And from the flip side, why become a mentor? Well, as I said, for you as a mentor, most companies do place a lot of value on you developing talent internally. It's a large part of when you start to get into the next levels of senior engineers and senior managers and things. You're expected to grow the talent within the company. So it's something that naturally, if you're not helping grow the talent, then are you really kind of involved in the growth of the organization? You tend to see problems from different perspectives, certainly problems within your teams or within your org. You start to see them from the view of people who are actually involved in them, and that's a useful perspective, especially if as you get more senior, you tend to lose touch with some of the things which are going on. And ultimately, I found it hugely rewarding. I've taken people from almost 16, 17 age bracket when they were looking to get into IT to someone who's now a senior IT manager in a company in Edinburgh, and taken them all the way through, just being around to ask advice. And it started with me chucking a couple of Java and design pattern books at her and go, just learn those. She was on a summer piece with us and did so well, brought her back, and then kept on going. And I just stopped being a line manager when we both left the company, but I've kept on as a mentor, just growing her over a period of sort of 7 or 8 years. And it's just now the catch-ups are just to see how she's doing and enjoy what she's kind of getting into. For the mentee, I know it's a bit of a crass statement, but you're literally standing on the shoulders of giants. You're using the experience of the mentor to leapfrog, further forward by not having to have that experience. You can use the mentor's experience to make you understand what are the next steps. You also, you don't get to make the same mistakes they did. I'm about to do this sort of thing, or I'm trying to face this problem. A good mentor will have been through that, will have been through the pain points, or even had their mentor been through it, and now they know how to do it. They're passing that mentor on. Quite often mentoring is a chain event where a mentor has been mentored by another mentor, and now they're looking to mentor somebody else with that same experience. And you get to develop those skills. You don't have to wait to explore an experience and have that happen. You can talk to a mentor about that experience. And for organizations, it's great for developing team cohesion. It creates a support network of peers and colleagues who are all kind of within the mentoring process. I'll talk about that in the next bit about kind of the longevity. And it also creates a safe space to ask difficult questions. It could be from anything from a challenge, your personal challenge you have, which is affecting your work, to a growth challenge, to you're looking for something new to do. Don't think that the mentors are there to help you deal with any of some of the difficult questions. So I always kind of see there's 3 types of mentoring in place, and they can happen in parallel. They can happen on their own, and you don't have to have one mentor. You can have multiple mentors for different problems. But there's some long-term, and the long-term ones are typically career-based. People who are probably going to mentor you over a period of months and years to help you progress. And they'll be light touch. They'll dip in every couple of months to see how going, maybe offer some advice, maybe talk about your long-term goals. And every time you meet them, I've done this and this that we talked about, but this isn't working. I'd like to think about, a move to a new company or a new department, or I'm thinking of taking on a new challenge. And you dip in and out. There's then the kind of the short-term mentoring, where you typically have a single goal that you want to achieve. Now, it might be it's the same person, but the short-term kind of mentors are people who you're going to be meeting probably every week or two, and there's a lot more checkpoints in to help you progress. They're investing a lot of their effort, so they want to be able to see that effort's happening on a regular basis. I think your long-term ones are your grandparents and your great-grandparents. Your short-term ones are your parents, and then the specific ones are like friends and colleagues. The ones where you've got a specific thing that you need to do. You may just need one or two conversations with somebody, and that typically comes from kind of the network. But don't think a single mentor is going to solve and help you with everything. They can quite often help you with kind of the small points. So a classic example is I get often asked quite a lot to help people to apply for Amazon. It's a very specific goal. It's either going to be they're going to get hired or they're not. So I'm happy to take them through the interview process and tell them what's coming and do that. And I get pinged those from long and short term mentors. This person's thinking of applying to Amazon. Can you just have a conversation? It's a bit like the presentation I give, talk them through what's coming, what's going to happen, and then kind of what the interview process is likely to be, and then it's done. And sometimes I can't get feedback because I don't work for Amazon, so I could never tell them why they didn't get it. It's not that point, but I can sit down and ask them how the loop went. Did they think they had any issues, and talk through the feedback that they got. That's quite often, and then help them through that. So how do you mentor? How do you be a mentor? I think treat everything as confidential. You're not there to line manage. You're not there anything other than somebody as a confidant that you can talk to. It's really important that you be in the room at all time. So, if you're going to be a mentor, you have to commit to investing the time and that period when you meet, whether it's, for a coffee, whether it's on a Zoom meeting, or whatever, you've got to be in that room and you've got to be engaged to understand what's going on. And it's not about teaching. It's not about managing. Quite a lot of the process of being a mentor is about listening to what people are talking about. And we'll talk about a couple of the techniques, the active listening process, and also the 5 whys. It's a really good technique, which can be used across many places, but as a mentor, you do kind of quite often use the 5 whys piece. And learn to guide mentees to a decision. So it's one of the difficult things is to go, yeah, you want to do this, right? Go and do that. That's not really an education process for anybody. And mentees will not know why. What you need to learn is how you guide people through talking about their decisions, listen to them about what they want to do, and guide them to making their own decision. Much more influential if they're kind of structured with it. And be prepared to offer multiple options and multiple opinions, because that go back to that toolbox. If you've got multiple tools for solving a similar problem, offer them all, or understand that maybe 2 or 3 might work. And when we talk about those checkpoints and milestones, get people to try multiple. Maybe you go and try these 2 ways and come back, and then we'll have a talk about how they worked. Or maybe you talk about try this option and see if that works. And if that doesn't, next meeting, let's try the next one. But always be available to offer multiple ways of solving the same problem. Use your own network to extend. Sometimes it's good to be able to turn around to somebody and go, I can't solve that problem for you, but I know somebody who's really good at interpersonal skills, or somebody who's really good at career change, and use that. And that's kind of using your network. But I think one part of the mentoring is set milestones. If it's just a conversation, it's not going to drive that person forward. But if you go at the next meeting, see if you've tried this, see if you've researched this area, see if you've looked into this, come back to me and let's talk about what happened. And I'll listen to what you've done and how you've got on, and then offer the next bit of advice or the next bit of information. And on the flip side, how to be a mentee, or how to mentee. Again, treat everything as confidential. Go into that space knowing that you can talk to them about anything, and it's going to have no influence on your career. Explain without prejudice what your problem is. You might be having a problem with somebody, you might be having a problem with a technology, you might be having something with a progression. Just be open and honest about it. They're there to listen. It's all in confidence, and then discuss openly. Be really clear about what you're trying to do. Listen to the advice and suggestions, and then be proactive. Take that advice and suggestions and go and act on it. It will be limited value if you sit there and listen to a mentor and they're offering, sagely, timely advice, and you don't do anything about it. That's a wasted opportunity for both of you. Go off and try different things. You don't have to tell anybody that you have a mentor and they've asked you to do things. You just try and slip them into your day work. Other times it's nice to then go talk to your line manager, and I've been given these couple of options. Can we try and plan this in to my work? And then, be really clear about gathering feedback. The next conversation that you have with your mentor should be based on, what did you try? What results did you see? Did it work? If not, why not? If it worked, what could be the next stage? And it's a kind of a two-way proactive conversation. Kind of keep going. And that's from both sides. It's all about listening. It's all about understanding how to do things. So I'm going to dip into a couple of things now, and this is a really key one for mentors about how to do the 5 whys. It doesn't have to be 5 whys, but it's always been called the 5 whys. Somebody has a problem, define what's happening, and understand, listening to what is happening. You then start going down the 5 whys. So why is that? So the response will come back. So why is that? Another response comes back. And what you're doing is you're digging deeper and deeper. Ultimately, there are a number of whys that you get down to a root cause. Never be afraid to ask the next why. Just because that didn't work. Well, why didn't that work? Because they weren't listening. Well, why weren't they listening? Oh, because they were too busy. Well, why were they too busy? Because they're overloaded. Well, there's your root cause. They can't help you because they're overloaded, not because they're not listening or ignoring you. You've got all the way down to the problem. It's a useful technique to do anything when you're dealing with problems, especially within IT. But as a mentor, the conversation is, so what's the problem? And why is that happening? So why, you just go why, and don't be afraid to back up a couple of whys and then go down another path. You learn to listen as a mentor. You learn to be able to understand problems, and a great one for anybody. You learn to do root cause analysis. You're pushing down so you finally get to that last piece. Now, sometimes there's nothing you can do because you're in a situation. If someone's just overloaded, you can't do anything about that, but at least you understand what the problem is, and your mentors help you understand. He may then talk to you about how you deal with somebody who's overloaded. But again, that's the next stage to the next stage, and they're using that experience of how you get through that. But it's always been called the 5 whys. It's worth listening. And the last piece is about active listening. I stole this slide because it's the best one, but it's from a mentoring book that I use. And it's about, as a mentor, how you listen and then how you develop. And the 5 whys features with kind of the part 3. But you have to be in the room. You have to be attentive. You have to be listening to what's being said, capturing notes, capturing ideas of what they're talking about. And if you saw my previous slide, it's about the interview questions. Ask open-ended questions. Try not to ask questions which result in a yes or a no. Ask them about a situation where they answer it by describing a problem, and then you started to ask probing questions, and that's where you get into the 5 why scenario. So you've asked her, tell me about what's happening. Why is that been a problem for you? What are you facing to make your next career move? And then they'll say, well, I don't know this technology, or I'm struggling to decide between going front end or back end. Okay, so what would be the benefits of going down at back end? What back end engineering do you like? Or what front end UI development do you like? Why do you like that? What are the things which will enthuse you to be a front end engineer? And ultimately you get to a point where they're worried about making a change from technology. They don't understand the technology, or they haven't got opportunities to work in that area. Okay, so let's find out. So, and then you can see you play that back when you request that clarification. So you go, no. So if I just summarize, you really want to become a UI developer, but you're not confident within JavaScript or CSS or whatever, or you're struggling to understand or which framework to choose. Okay, so why don't we go and explore a couple of frameworks and you do some proof of concept? You're just driving down that time and time again. And then you give people that opportunity to reflect on what you've said. So you've paraphrased for them. And what you're looking for is a positive affirmation. Have I said back to you what we're kind of talking about as the problem? And it just kind of loops around again. So once you understand the problem, you can then go off and say, in my advice, when I've done technology changes or gone chasing technologies, I've done this, I've done that, and you're offering advice and then giving them some milestones to then try and achieve. And that thinking can just loop around on the same problem multiple times, or you can pick up kind of individual problems as well as you kind of go through that. Really useful skill, not specific to mentoring. So anybody who's looking to go into management, in terms of software development management, engineering management, that 7 key listening pieces is a really important piece. Quite helps with home life as well, if you listen to what's going on. So to finish, mentoring is a positive experience for everyone. If you're struggling to get traction with the mentor, it's the wrong mentor. Move on. Go and get somebody else. Go and ask, say, this is not working for me. Mentors have their own way of communicating, their own skill set, and their own way of helping people. It's not working, just to be clear. It's not working for me. You also get out what you put in. If you're proactive, if you're in the room both as a mentor and a mentee, you'll get a lot of benefit out of it. It's lovely to see people grow. It's lovely to see people kind of develop or just overcome some of the problems that they've come to you. It's absolutely fine to be a mentor and a mentee at the same time, as long as the two things aren't about the same problem. I've been mentoring people, and at the same time, I've had mentors about my career progression, stuff I want to do. And the two have been totally separate. It's absolutely fine to be mentoring and be mentored at the same time. It's perfectly fine to have more than one mentor or even mentee. A lot of mentors have 2 or 3 to help them go along. But it's fine to have multiple mentors. They might be dealing with different problems. One of them might be a personal problem, one might be a technical problem, one of them might be a career coach. But there's nothing wrong with having multiple ones. It does become a bit of a problem if they're all at the same issue, because then you've got conflicting advice, or sometimes you get advice. And try not to ask more than one person to help with the same problem. As I said, know when to call it a day. Know when to turn around and go, this is not working, or we've just exhausted the mentoring. I've got to the place I need to be, and thank you very much, you've helped me, but I think I might need to move on or just take a break from mentoring and go and find my own feet. And above all, have fun, enjoy the experience. Don't think it's a struggle to do these things. I meet a mentor I have every 6 months. And literally we sit in a bar and just talk about my career. And he's really interested in just what's happening within the space I work in. And he's getting very close to retirement now. And I think for him, he just keeps in the loop of kind of what's going on. So, it's still kind of great fun. Thank you. That's it. Any questions or anything that people want to raise or clarifications on kind of what I presented?
First, I have to say a big thank you, Keith. That was a really thorough, good talk, and a kind of walk around some nice insights from both sides and equally tools. So thank you. Do we have any questions? I can't. Sorry, you were going to say something.
I said you can't really do mentoring without mentee, and you can't do mentee without mentee. They're so intimately linked that it only works when mentee and mentors are kind of on the same page. So I think I've always found it's the best way to kind of link the two together.
Oh, brilliant. I have a raised hand from Maggie. Thank you. Maggie, what would you like to ask?
Hi, thank you very much, and thank you, Keith. The question I wanted to ask is around contract, or sort of the formal bit around the mentee-mentor relationship, especially if you're working with a mentor that's outside of your organization. Is your experience that you sign some sort of contract, or how do you establish the boundaries and the goals and sort of make it formal, I suppose?
I think if it's outside of your organization, it's the relationship, not any kind of, you don't sign any confidentiality agreement because there's nothing formal within that relationship. sometimes you may go to career coaches, and you know they're establishing a kind of a formal path for your career. But the mentors out with work are there to allow you just to have full and frank conversations. You can say what you like to that person, and it should have no comeback. You know, a failed mentor is somebody who contacts your company and says, "Well, I heard this." That, you know, that nobody else would ever use them again. But I've never really heard of anybody signing NDAs with mentors or any sort of commercial kind of contract. It's just a relationship to help you move forward.
And Maggie, I think that's one of the distinctions people make between coaching and mentoring. Basically, coaching is that sort of agreement, more implicit structure with a targeted outcome. Mentoring, it is kind of guiding somebody a lot more. So you do have to come to it with, you know, being cautious about what you disclose, absolutely, but in the same way you would with anybody, if you see what I mean.
And apart from sort of the privacy and the ND part of it, in terms of setting goals and agreeing on goals, that's also something that is fluid in this relationship. Is it?
Absolutely. It's about, you know, you're going to somebody because you've either been told or you believe they have a certain experience that you could gain from. So you sit down, you explain the problem that you're having. It could be, you know, your mentor's really there for anything that you want to talk to them about, and in a language that you want to talk to them about. And that's that confidentiality piece. You go into that relationship going, I will just explain to you how I'm feeling about my job, my career, my prospects, whatever. And that guy, the person you're then speaking to, will hopefully have had similar experiences, have that toolbox full of things and go, well, have you thought about this? Have you tried that? When I did that, I did X, Y, and Z. Does that resonate with you? Yeah, okay, so why don't we set some milestones where you may go and explain to an individual the problem you're having, or you may go and explore a different area that you want to work into, and then look for an opportunity to move that way. And it's more just kind of, quite often it's supporting the decisions you think you need to make or you think you're going to make, but to guide you to the more specific decision based on their experience.
Okay, great, thank you.
Go on, Joe.
Hi, Keith. Thanks very much for that talk. That was great. Yeah, my question was just, so I guess for someone like me starting out, I could see how I could be mentored. But I want to know, for someone like yourself, how did you know at what point you could be a mentor, and at what point, maybe is it like a certain experiences you've had or skills you've had? At what point can you say, oh yes, I can now mentor somewhere else? It's
a really good question, because it kind of creeps up on you to a certain degree. You suddenly find that you're answering more questions about kind of experience. It's all based on experience. And I got into it first when a company I was working for had a mentoring program. You signed up, and you signed up to be a mentee, and then over time you signed up to be a mentor, and you were paired with mentees. So you went through a bit of an evaluation. So you typically start as a mentee and looking to get some advice on various things, or just get some kind of course correction on career. And then, you know, you think, oh, I reckon I could probably do this. So you sign up for the mentor section, and you go through some evaluation from HR to make sure that you've got at least some of the kind of the core skills, and then they just match you up. And it was always intercompany, but it was done outside of teams. So you're never mentoring anybody on your own kind of team. Quite often your own department, you were mentoring people from different departments and sometimes different skills, and you were providing your experience within that organization on how things work quite often. So junior staff who didn't know how the progress worked, or didn't know how to best develop themselves, you were helping them go through that. And then once you kind of leave that organization, you've done it 2, 3, 4 times, you just make yourself available to carry it on.
Nice one, thanks.
It's not unusual for companies to use a structure where you do a graduate program and you mentor the next intake a year later, basically. And it can be a really nice exercise in banking what you know as well, because it does make you reflect on what you've learned. And then, a bit like as Keith goes, the more you do that, you suddenly realize you have a toolbox rather than just a hammer. Any other questions? apologies, I'm having to flick up and down the stack in Zoom. So if anybody has that, if you raise your hand, it pops you to the top actually. So I think what's nice to mention at this stage as well, we have actually had a project request from CodeClan to build a mentoring tool, so that there'll be a really easy way for people to offer themselves as mentors or be mentored. So if you're interested in getting involved in that project, that's one just starting with a bit of research. Equally, if any of you are happy to join in and be research candidates for us, it would be great if you wouldn't mind. Obviously, we kind of want to, the idea is to make it as lightweight as possible in a way. You can spend hours trying to match people, but ultimately, I mean, I guess to use your example, Maggie, you were asking a lot there about goals. You finding somebody that is also goal orientated will probably be an easier relationship for you, if you know what I mean. So, you know, a lot of it is sort of different points in your career, different people will be useful to talk to, sort of thing. So do get in touch if you're interested. Any other questions? No, excellent. Well, there's a few new names there. Welcome. We'd love to see you in the community. There is another talk next week by our very own Robin Williams, who's not the Robbie Williams you may all immediately default to, but has been working with the STA for a while. So we'd love to see you next week as well. Brilliant. Well, thank you, Keith. I'm going to stop recording in case anybody has a question that